His laughter still grates on my ears. Not the infectious, friendly kind sparked by a witty joke or a captivating story. No, this was a different beast altogether. Icy as a winter wind, sharp as a razor, and dripping with contempt. I was just swirling yesterday's coffee in my mug in the kitchen when Ethan appeared. The new acting CEO, and in reality, the sole heir of the company's founder. He moved with the self-assurance of someone entering his own home. Well, in essence, he was. No greeting, no introduction. He simply leaned against the kitchen island, arms crossed, and looked me up and down as if appraising a prize cow at auction. "You're Ashley, right?" His voice held an indifference as if he were doing me a favor by uttering my name. I turned, forcing a semblance of a welcoming smile onto my face. "Yes, it's nice to meet you, Ethan. Welcome to the team." He twisted his lips into a smirk, as if I had already managed to bore him. "Come to my office in 5 minutes. Bring your laptop." It didn't sound like a request, but an order. A chill ran down my spine. After so many years in the corporate world, I had learned to recognize the harbingers of a storm without fail. And something about his manner, that arrogance, that icy detachment, made my stomach clench painfully. The office door swung open precisely 5 minutes later. Ethan didn't even bother to offer me a seat. His pen, like a metronome of cynicism, tapped out a clear, smug rhythm on the lacquered surface of the desk. "We're optimizing the structure," he said in the tone of a jaded waiter presenting a mediocre dish. "New leadership, new vision. We need flexible, efficient teams. You are not a key player." And then came his laughter. A short, cutting, contemptuous sound, as if he found it amusing that he even had to explain such an obvious thing. The world swayed beneath my feet for a second. Not a key employee? I practically dragged this client relations department up from the ashes. Landed the biggest clients when the company was barely breathing. Worked until midnight, survived 3 mergers, 2 restructurings, and more sleepless nights than there are stars in the sky. Words of protest churned inside me. I wanted to scream, to unleash all the pain and resentment. But instead, a smile bloomed on my face. Calm, courteous, full of understanding. "Good luck, Ethan," I whispered, putting a completely different meaning into those words than he could have imagined. Silently, with a stony face, I began gathering my things from the desk. Colleagues, like rabbits, froze in their cubicle cages, watching me with looks of horror and sympathy. The whispers behind my back were louder than any shout. Some seemed to want to stand up for me, but no one dared. And I didn't blame them. Fear is a powerful motivator. Amid the gray weekdays, where survival is the art of staying in the shadows, I carried the box of my personal belongings to the car. A wave of memories washed over me, sleepless nights, inhuman deadlines, sacrifices I made without hesitation. Missed birthdays, anniversaries, even my own divorce hearing, all for the sake of the company. And now, all that dedication was condensed into 5 minutes of humiliating conversation, seasoned with Ethan's sarcastic laughter. Oddly enough, I didn't feel rage. Not yet. Something else was brewing inside me, a cold, quiet certainty that Ethan had just made a fatal mistake. He simply didn't know, nor did he consider it necessary to find out, that I wasn't just one of the managers. I was the very linchpin that kept the company's most important relationships with investors afloat. We were on the verge of a multi-million-dollar deal with Global Tech Ventures, a deal that rested entirely on trust forged through years of painstaking negotiations. The preliminary agreement contained a clause that I personally insisted on during an exhausting overnight dispute with their chief legal counsel. Any significant change in key personnel would entail immediate review or cancellation of the deal. Ethan, with his short-sightedness, had just signed the death warrant for that deal. And so, with one arrogant stroke of the pen and a smug smirk, Ethan set the fatal clause in motion, unaware. I sat in the car, the city lights blurred like watercolors behind the rainy glass. The phone vibrated in my hand. It was Megan, one of my subordinates, a girl I had nurtured in the company. "Ashley, is it true?" she whispered, as if afraid that a loud sound would shatter a fragile hope. Yes, I breathed, feeling the burden becoming unbearable with each word. I'm leaving. Silence hung in the receiver, and then her voice, trembling with despair, you were the only reason Evergreen trusted us. I closed my eyes, as if trying to shield myself from the impending disaster. I know. Again silence, oppressive, crushing. What will happen now? I opened my eyes, staring into the indifferent darkness of the night. I think, I said slowly, each word like a shard of ice, they'll realize their mistake when they remove the wrong part from the foundation. Megan was silent. Words were unnecessary. Disconnecting the call, I felt a strange, bittersweet relief. A small, tormented part of my soul finally breathed freely. It's over. At least, my part in this nightmare is. This day, Ethan's first day in charge, will go down in company history not for his leadership qualities or brilliant strategies. No, it will be remembered for completely different reasons. And tomorrow, when angry investors unleash a barrage of calls, when the board of directors demands explanations, Ethan will realize with horror how irreplaceable I was. The night before had been agonizing. I didn't toss and turn in bed, no. I simply lay there, staring at the ceiling, and felt the ominous, electric tension, the harbinger of the approaching storm, with my skin. By 7 a.m., I was already sitting at the kitchen table. The cup of coffee had long since gone cold as I, as if in a trance, scrolled through the newsfeed on my phone. So far, silence. No signs of the impending disaster. Maybe, a faint hope flickered, they'll manage to stabilize the situation before everything goes to hell. But deep down, I knew it was just an illusion. At 8:13 a.m., my phone vibrated to life. A message from Megan. Megan *, they're panicking. Investors have been on the line since 9 a.m. Ethan's been holed up in the conference room with the lawyers since 7:30. A faint but genuine smile appeared on my lips. For the first time since being fired, I was overcome by a wave of true, almost malicious satisfaction. I vividly imagined the scene, Ethan, pacing around the glass cube of the conference room, desperately trying to smooth over the burgeoning scandal with meaningless phrases that he himself didn't believe in. Lawyers frantically flipping through contracts until they stumbled upon the very clause that I had insisted on, their faces contorting with growing horror. I sipped my cold coffee. The day was just getting started. At 8:45 a.m., my phone vibrated with a new message. This time from Kevin, an old friend from the finance department. Ashley, they're in a panic, he wrote. Board members are already on the line. News of the firing leaked yesterday, and now they're demanding explanations about how it will affect the deal with Evergreen. I leaned back in my chair, feeling satisfied. Events were unfolding even faster than I had anticipated. Evergreen Ventures was not just an investor. They were the force that breathed life into companies like Sterling Enterprises. Their name was a pass to the big leagues, and Ethan's arrogance had jeopardized not just a lucrative deal, it had undermined their precious trust. At 9:05 a.m., the real chaos began. Megan wrote again, Megan, investors are on the line. Ethan, poor guy, is stuttering like a schoolboy taking an exam. And then, like a bolt from the blue, Mr. Carter bursts in. I involuntarily straightened up, feeling a chill run down my spine. Mr. Carter. Ethan's father, who had retired a year ago and was shuttling between overseas branches, giving his son a chance to prove himself. He wasn't supposed to be here today. His sudden appearance suggested that things were much worse than I had imagined. At 9:21 a.m., the last message from Megan arrived, you won't believe it. Mr. Carter gave Ethan a dressing down right in front of the investors. He was yelling so loud the whole office could hear. What have you done? I exhaled slowly, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and some kind of grim satisfaction. It wasn't just about the failed deal. It was about everything I had built over the past 10 years, the trust, the relationships, the solid foundation that had made Sterling Enterprises strong. And Ethan, without asking anyone who had created all this, had simply taken it and destroyed it. At 9:30 a.m., the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost hung up, but curiosity won. Ashley, this is Mr. Carter, he said. His voice sounded strained, like a taut string, and at the same time tired. The voice of a man who was trying to maintain his composure with the last of his strength. I need to talk to you, he added. Today. Please. Silence hung on the line, like a thick fog. Through the static, I could almost physically feel his desperation. What about? I asked evenly, trying to keep my voice as calm as the surface of a frozen lake. About the deal with Global Tech Ventures, he blurted out in response. They're questioning everything. They say the dismissal of key employees violates the preliminary agreements. They only want to talk to you, Ashley. No one else. I was silent, pondering what I had heard. Please, Ashley, he pleaded. We didn't foresee this turn of events. You just didn't bother to ask, I interrupted softly but firmly. A heavy sigh traveled over the wires. You're right. And Ethan? He didn't understand the seriousness of the situation. I thought. I was sure he was ready. I was silent. Words were unnecessary. I'll come, I finally said. But I have one condition. Anything, he replied without hesitation. He was ready for anything to save the situation. I'll be working directly with you, I cut in, no intermediaries in the form of Ethan. Silence returned, thick and strained, and then, with relief. Agreed. I ended the call and carefully placed the phone on the table. My hand didn't tremble. There was no anger, no vindictive triumph. Just something deeper, calmer. Clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't seeking recognition or approval. I just knew what I had to do. I knew my worth, and the company had to acknowledge it. If they wanted me back, even temporarily, they would have to play by my rules. Choosing a strict, impeccably fitting suit, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My gaze was sharper, harder. The silver at my temples seemed brighter than usual, silent witnesses to all the battles I had fought while others basked in the limelight. But today, everything would change. Today, I wouldn't be fighting for a place in the sun. Today, I was the sun, and Ethan, that smug little boy, would understand what it meant to lose an irreplaceable person. In the lobby, the bright light reflecting off the impeccably polished marble stung my eyes. It was a strange feeling, returning to Sterling Enterprises. Not as a regular employee, no. As something more, as a force to be reckoned with. The receptionist flinched when she saw me and immediately stood at attention. Miss Carter, Ashley, she stammered, visibly nervous. Mr. Carter is expecting you. Penthouse. One short nod, and I maintained my mask of composure. The elevator doors closed, and in the mirrored steel, I saw my reflection, collected, sharp, impenetrable. That's exactly how I needed to be today. Stepping out of the elevator into the penthouse, I felt the air around me thicken. Conversations died down, turning into barely audible whispers, and dozens of eyes turned to me. Everyone knew. They knew what had happened, and they knew why I was here. Ethan was standing near the glass walls of the conference room, arms crossed and laughing stiffly at something one of the junior managers was saying to him. Spotting me, he paled as if all the blood had drained from his face in an instant. But then a crooked smirk appeared on his face. Well, look who's back. He shouted, making sure half the floor could hear him. Couldn't stay away, could you? I walked past him without giving him a word or a glance. Didn't even blink. I just walked, and the quiet click of my heels seemed deafening in the ensuing silence. Let him squirm, let him writhe. His words no longer had power over me. Mr. Carter was waiting for me near his office. He looked haggard, as if he had aged several years since our last meeting. He looked exhausted, the fatigue visible even through his expensive suit. Ashley, he said quietly, extending his hand. I returned the handshake firmly, but without a trace of warmth. Too much still remained unsaid. Later. Right now, the deal had to be saved. His office offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, like an unfolded painting. He gestured to a chair. "I'm truly sorry that everything turned out this way," he began, his voice subdued. "You didn't deserve this." I allowed the silence to hang in the air, absorbing his words. Then I gave a short nod. An admission of guilt. But not forgiveness. Not yet. He cleared his throat, placing a thick folder on the table between us. "The Evergreen team is waiting for a call. They are ready to completely terminate the deal unless you get involved personally. I was able to buy us a few hours." I opened the folder. Inside was chaos. Panicked, hastily made notes, corrections. Altered contracts, emails sent at 2 in the morning with desperate requests for reassessment. A real mess. I calmly closed the folder. "I'll talk to them," I said in an even voice. "But first, I need this in writing." No room for doubt. The letter, already printed and lying in front of me, was my pass to undivided control over the global tech deal. No obstacles, especially from Ethan. I scanned the text, signed my name, and only then allowed myself a barely perceptible sigh of relief. "Let's begin," I said, feeling a surge of triumph. He nodded and reached for the intercom, but before he could dial the number, the door burst open with a bang, and Ethan stormed into the office. "This is a farce," he blurted out, glaring at me. "You're not seriously going to dance to her tune, are you?" In response, Mr. Carter's voice rang out like a whip, causing Ethan to flinch and blink rapidly. "I trusted you." Mr. Carter's words were full not of anger, but of bitter disappointment. "I trusted you to lead, to respect those who built this company. And what did you do? You're trying to tear it apart, like an unreasonable child breaking a toy." Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but Mr. Carter cut him off mid-sentence. "You fired the only person who was maintaining our most important partnership. You didn't even bother to read the personnel files. You put the future of the entire company at risk. And all for what? To inflate your bloated ego?" Mr. Carter's voice boomed in the office, hanging in the ringing silence. I remained silent, watching him grapple with his own anger and disappointment. "You are suspended from making any decisions, starting this minute," Mr. Carter snapped. "The legal department is already preparing an official notification. And if the deal with Evergreen falls through because of you, the board of directors will unanimously vote to fire you." Ethan's face flushed crimson. For the first time, I saw genuine shock on his face, not arrogance. It seemed he was only now realizing the catastrophe he had created. The wall of smugness crumbled, revealing fear. "This isn't over," he hissed through his teeth, casting a venomous glance at me before storming out of the office. I didn't even flinch. He wasn't worth a single wasted nerve. As the door slammed shut behind Ethan, Mr. Carter slumped heavily into his chair. "I should have seen this sooner," he muttered, as if talking to himself. I looked at him calmly. "Blind faith is a dangerous thing," I said quietly. "Especially when it blinds you to the truth." He nodded wearily, then reached for the phone and dialed Evergreen Ventures. The phone rang, and I straightened up, ready to get back in the game. Not for them, not for him, but for myself. Because sometimes the most powerful statement isn't slamming the door, but triumphantly returning, hardened and unyielding, and dictating your own rules. The call connected. A ringing silence filled the room. The moment had arrived. "Good morning," I said, my voice sounding surprisingly steady as the speakerphone was activated. I heard the faint hum of office life on the other end of the line, the rustle of paper, the click of keyboards, the tense silence of people holding their breath. "Ashley," came the icy voice of Nathaniel Hayes, the leading partner at All Ventures. There was no anger, which was far worse. It was laced with coldness. "I must admit, we were somewhat surprised by your departure," he said with feigned caution. I glanced discreetly at Mr. Carter. He sat upright, stiff as a board, his hands clenched into fists on the desk. He didn't utter a word. "My departure," I calmly retorted, "I assure you, was neither voluntary nor strategic." A pause ensued. I could physically feel them weighing my every word, trying to gauge whether I could be trusted. Nathaniel spoke again, and steely notes crept into his voice. We believed that you were the cornerstone of this deal, that our trust in it blossomed because of your personal involvement. You are absolutely right, my response was even and confident. I take that responsibility with the utmost seriousness. Silence hung in the air, oppressive, like a noose around the neck. They had given me a chance. A single one. I leaned forward, my voice clear and composed, like a taut string. The terms we agreed upon are not just based on dry numbers and promises. They grew from the relationships we have built over the past 2 years. Relationships based on reliability, openness, and mutual respect. I am here today to ensure that that foundation remains unshaken. Suddenly, a sharp exhale from Nathaniel broke through the speaker. Then answer one question. If the leadership at Sterling Enterprises is so unstable, how can we be sure that our investment is safe? The question was ruthless, but fair. I didn't allow myself the slightest hesitation. Leadership is not just a position, I said, my voice remaining calm, but with steel ringing in it. Leadership is, above all, responsibility. Leadership is not just words, it is action. I am still here, with you. And I intend to keep every promise we have made. The mistakes made by one person, a person who is no longer here, cannot destroy the solid foundation we have built together. Rather, it serves as a painful but important lesson. Trust should not be placed in impressive titles, but in proven individuals. A heavy pause ensued. Mr. Carter sat as if paralyzed, afraid to even move. Finally, Nathaniel, as if emerging from a stupor, spoke. His voice sounded softer, more empathetic. We appreciate your frankness, Ashley, he said. Before I could utter a word in response, another voice intervened. A voice I hadn't expected to hear. Olivia Baker, the chief legal counsel for Evergreen, spoke clearly and confidently. I have thoroughly reviewed the staffing provisions in the preliminary agreement, her words sounded like a judgment. We have the full right to withdraw from the deal without any penalties. I know, I replied simply, trying to maintain my composure. Again, there was a pause, but Olivia continued, and an unexpected note of understanding appeared in her voice. We also recognize that we are all human and can make mistakes. Provided Ashley remains our primary contact, vested with all necessary contractual authority, we are prepared to move forward. However, we have one condition. I raised an eyebrow, feeling the steel in my voice despite them not seeing my face. What is the price? My question was sharp and concise. That Sterling Enterprises publicly acknowledges its error and provides written confirmation of its unwavering commitment to leadership stability. I didn't bother looking at Mr. Carter. There was no need. This was the price for their eroded trust, the only way to restore it. You will have it by the end of the day, I stated firmly. Nathaniel cleared his throat, as if releasing an invisible burden. In that case, we are ready to resume negotiations. The tension that had weighed on my shoulders finally eased, like cracking ice under a confident stride. Mr. Carter visibly relaxed, leaning back slightly in his chair. Thank you, Ashley, he said with relief. Nathaniel added, his voice warmer, we once trusted you. Now we remember why. The call ended with dry formalities and promises of further action, but I only half listened. All my concentration was consumed by the adrenaline surging through my veins. Not fear, no, but the triumphant realization that I had endured, that I had been tested, and I hadn't broken. As the excruciating call ended, Mr. Carter exhaled loudly, as if shrugging off an unbearable weight. You saved us, he said, his voice strained with emotion. Did I? I raised an eyebrow, but immediately lowered my hand, as if waving away his gratitude. I didn't do it for you, I said quietly but firmly. I did it for those who built this company long before Ethan decided to destroy it. He nodded slowly, a shadow of shame crossing his face. You deserve more, he muttered. I know, I snapped, feeling the weight of the moment pressing on my shoulders like a second skin. I stood up and gathered my papers, trying to hide the tremor in my hands. Just as I reached the door, Mr. Carter spoke again, his voice pleading, Ashley. We need you here permanently. Not just to fix what's been done, but to lead, to build with us. I froze, clutching the doorframe with whitening knuckles. I'll think about it, I tossed over my shoulder, and this time my words weren't an empty promise. But if I come back, it will be on my terms. No more silent sacrifices, no more invisible work. If you want me to rebuild what Ethan almost destroyed, you must finally learn to distinguish those who inherit power from those who earn it. And this time, I won't let you forget it. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Late in the evening, like a sentence, the new agreement was signed. All ventures officially agreed to continue the collaboration, and the board of directors sent out a carefully worded internal memorandum across the company. Effective immediately, Ashley Carter is appointed acting head of client relations, reporting directly to the CEO. Victory. At least, that's how it looked on paper. But anyone who has ever worked in corporations like Sterling Enterprises knows that victories don't always mean the end of the war. Sometimes they only herald the beginning of a whole new round of battles. The first alarm bell rang just a few hours later. An email from HR popped up on the monitor. An invitation to a routine interview to confirm leadership positions in light of recent changes. It sounded innocent, even polite, but the timing was too perfect, the wording too polished. I replied politely, scheduling the meeting for the next morning. Then I leaned back in my chair, and a whirlwind of questions swirled in my head. What the hell is really going on here? Ethan may have lost his position publicly, but people like him don't just disappear. No, they lick their wounds, plot intrigues. And if he's no match for me in the open, he certainly is underhandedly. That evening, as the office emptied, I wandered the corridors, my footsteps echoing off the polished floor. The place seemed stripped bare, different, not better, just naked. As if all those perfunctory smiles, corporate mantras, had been torn away, leaving only the naked essence, power, ambition, fear. Lingering by the coffee machine, I heard muffled voices. I'm telling you, a woman's voice hissed, cracking with anxiety. She won't last long. Ethan still has his people, he's not forgotten. The second voice, male, low, sounded smug. It doesn't matter that she pulled off that deal. Now she's a liability, too much noise around her. I turned and walked away, not wanting to be noticed. I didn't need names, no need to start a fight. I understood everything anyway. Ethan set the mechanism in motion the very day he tried to throw me off. Rot. And simply removing him from the system isn't enough to heal it. He abandoned those who were swimming in the murky waters of chaos, those whose fates were intertwined with his rise. Now, like rats fleeing a sinking ship, they were frantically searching for salvation. Returning home that night, I felt the full weight of this oppressive reality crashing down on me like a lead blanket. I sat by the window, gazing at the twinkling lights of the city, contemplating as if standing at a crossroads. I had a choice, to run, to make a killing, to leave this chaos behind and start a new life somewhere quiet. There would be companies that would snatch up someone who had just rescued a multi-million-dollar partnership under immense pressure. But I could also stay. Stay and fight. Stay and rebuild. But rebuilding isn't just shuffling papers. It's uprooting the rot from its core. It's sleepless nights, tough conversations, enemies hiding behind masks of goodwill. It means becoming a leader not just in words, but in deeds. Am I ready for this? I didn't know. Not yet. But one thing I knew for sure, if I stayed, I would no longer just survive, silently swallowing insults. I would no longer pretend to be amiable with these hypocrites who smile to my face while sharpening knives behind my back. I will survive. I will become a nightmare, the embodiment of their darkest fears, a woman who knows her worth, unyielding, documenting every step she takes. Exactly at midnight, as the city fell asleep, shrouded in silence, I opened my notebook. And I started writing. Everything. Every whisper, every stumble, every suspicious edit in documents, every secret meeting. Every fleeting shadow I turned into lines on paper. And if Ethan or anyone from his gang thought they could erase me from the face of the earth with dirty gossip and ambiguous hints, they were sorely mistaken. The next time they decide to attack, I'll be ready. This fight is far from over. It has simply moved to a new level. And now I am no longer the prey. I am the hunter. The next morning, I entered the HR conference room 10 minutes before the scheduled time. The cold, soulless room, flooded with harsh fluorescent light, seemed to expose every flaw. I sat at the far end of the table, notebook in hand, as impenetrable as a rock. If they think they've cornered me, they're deeply mistaken. I brought my own trap. 2 HR representatives entered the room, with strained politeness and excessive formality. And following them, as expected, Ethan slipped in. Ethan sat opposite me, smirking smugly. His presence here was absurd, but he still seemed to believe he was in control of the situation. "Ashley," said one of the HR staff, whose name I think was Jane, nervously smoothing the folder in front of her. "We've gathered to discuss some issues regarding your recent behavior." I tilted my head slightly, feigning curiosity. "Issues?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. Emma, the second HR representative, with whom I had worked side by side for many years, was clearly uncomfortable. She avoided my gaze, but there was no need. I understood perfectly what they were getting at. Ethan leaned forward, his voice sounding sweet and saccharine, like molasses. "There have been concerns," he purred, "regarding your ability to effectively build relationships under increased pressure. Some believe that your recent actions, while bringing short-term success, may indicate instability." "May indicate," Emma echoed quietly, without looking up. There it is. Classic dirty game. Sow the seed of doubt. Throw out a few vague phrases about instability, just enough to tarnish a reputation without making specific accusations, and then play the card of caring about corporate well-being. I felt rage boiling inside me. I allowed myself a barely perceptible but knowing smile, which, I thought, momentarily robbed Ethan of his confidence. Opening my notebook, I carefully turned the pages I had written the night before. "Before we continue," I said clearly and confidently, "I would like to submit some documents to the case." The HR representatives blinked in confusion, and Ethan seemed to freeze. I slid the sheets across the table, with detailed records of every suspicious encounter I had witnessed in the past week. Strange delays in sending emails, files being opened without proper authorization, intentional spreading of rumors in certain departments, all with dates, times, and names of witnesses. I have also reported potential IT security breaches, I added quietly but emphatically. In the appendix, you will find confirmation letters from our IT department. Since last night, an internal audit has been underway at the direction of the CEO. Emma was visibly shaken. You already reported it?" she stammered, glancing nervously at Ethan. "Of course," I replied, "several weeks ago, when the first signs appeared. I take my responsibilities very seriously." A ringing silence filled the room. Ethan opened his mouth like a fish out of water, trying to say something in his defense, but the words caught in his throat. He rushed, miscalculated, and I was ready. Leaning back in my chair with a slight sense of triumph, I watched the realization of the blow wash over him in waves, like poison slowly spreading through his veins. He had been exposed. Not only to me, but to HR, the all-seeing eye of the IT department, and soon to the board of directors itself. He underestimated me at every turn, presumptuously assuming I would remain in the shadows. Now, there was nowhere to run. At that moment, Mr. Carter entered the room, summoned by Emma's quiet, desperate message. One look at the documents spread out on the table and at Ethan's face, and everything became clear to him. "I believe this meeting is adjourned," Mr. Carter said in an icy tone that sent shivers down my spine. Ethan spun around, stammering in an attempt to justify himself. "Dad, listen. It's not what it looks like. She's just..." "You," Mr. Carter interrupted, his voice devoid of any sympathy, "you're done. No shouting, no hysterics, no dramatic scenes, just a simple, final pronouncement of judgment." That same day, HR escorted Ethan out of the building. No farewell party, no severance package, no golden parachute, just a crushing silence that swallowed his career whole. And I remained. Not to prove anything to anyone, but because true leadership is not the ability to survive the storm, but the ability to remain standing when the storm has passed and everyone else has long scattered in search of safety. In the days that followed, the office transformed beyond recognition. The glances of colleagues no longer slid past, but met mine. Departments that had previously been at odds now worked together. For the first time in a long time, hope flickered. On Friday morning, Mr. Carter summoned me to his office. Without unnecessary words or fake ovations, just a dry letter that he silently slid across the table. Chief Operating Officer. Effective immediately. I looked at him in stunned silence. You earned it, he said simply, but meaningfully. I took the letter, carefully folded it, and tucked it into my pocket. No tears, no grand speeches, just a quiet, but firm acknowledgement of what I had fought so hard for and finally won. Later, leaving the office, I saw the city spread out before me like a carpet of shimmering lights, full of new opportunities. I understood that new challenges, new storms, and new battles lay ahead. But now I knew something much more important: strength lies not in the loudness of the cry, but in the quiet, unwavering determination not to break. And no one, not even the boss's spoiled son, will ever be able to take that confidence away from me again.